Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tara East, writer, scholar, teacher, and author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. If you're a little bit late to the party here, I'm currently doing a series on the writing rules of famous authors. In the first week, I covered Octavia Butler's 9 Rules of Writing, followed by Natalie Goldberg's 7 Rules of Writing. And this week, I'm going to focus on Kurt Vonnegut's 8 Rules. As I've done in previous videos, I'd like to quickly acknowledge that we're in a really strange time right now. So writing may not be your priority because you have to deal with these other concerns that are just not ordinarily a part of your life. But now that restrictions are starting to loosen up, I decided that I would create this series as a way to support you and to inspire you to hopefully get back to the blank page when and if you can. Now on to the video. Kurt Vonnegut is an American writer whose novel Slaughterhouse-Five you probably read when you were in high school. And if you didn't, I highly recommend you change that situation and add it to the top of your TBR pile. Vonnegut's writing career spanned 50 years. He published 14 novels, 3 short story collections, 5 plays, and 5 works of non-fiction, with further collections published following his death. Now, if you haven't read any of Vonnegut's work before, then I want to share this quick quote with you that I think captures the author's spirit quite well. Novel writing doesn't breed serenity. It is lying, you know. And the novelist has to spend a lot of time during the course of his writing worrying about whether he is going to get away with his lies. If he fails to, his novel isn't going to work. Now that we've set the tone for this video, I would like to preface that there really are no writing rules other than the ones you decide for yourself. The whole intention of this series is that you hear the different advice of famous, successful authors and that you take the advice that appeals to you while leaving the rest. So in this video, as with my previous videos, I will be listing the author's rules, followed by my own commentary and interpretation of that rule. And in the case of this week's video, I'd also like to add that Kurt Vonnegut's rules are very much geared towards fiction writers. So rule number 1, use the time of a total stranger in a way that he or she will not feel the time was wasted. Now, this rule takes on a totally different meaning in the age of technology. People are busy, our attention spans are shorter, we're highly distracted, and we have easy access to entertainment. Contemporary novelists aren't just competing among themselves, they're competing with Netflix, Stan, YouTube, social media, and so on. Few people will stick with a book that isn't demanding their attention, that they don't feel compelled to read. Few people are willing to invest their time in a work that doesn't give them something back. Rule number 2, give the reader at least one character they can root for. I've read a lot of books over the last few years, both literary and genre, whose casts are comprised of despicable characters. However, there's always at least one character who I despise
a little bit less than everybody else,
or whose flaws are more endearing than off-putting. Everyone likes a fuck-up with a heart of gold. I absolutely believe that there are readers out there who are sophisticated enough to stay with a book whose characters are complex, contradicting, and unlikable. I can think of several authors who have made best-selling careers out of this exact formula. And yet, even in these challenging works, there is at least one character for whom the reader can root for. Rule number 3, every character should want something, even if it's only a glass of water. One classic craft rule is to figure out what your character wants and then take it away from them. This one simple tactic forms the basis of tension, character motivation, and narrative drive. If you know what your character wants, you also know the general trajectory of the plot, the core conflict, potential obstacles, and who your protagonist is. Rule number 4, Every sentence must do one of two things: reveal character or advance the action. Now this circles back to rule number 1. Don't waste people's time. You cannot afford to have any dead sentences in your story. Every line must be doing something. Because let's be honest, the page-turning novels that keep us awake until 2 o'clock in the morning, this happens because every sentence is pulling us along into the next. If a story is constantly turning, a reader will stick with it. But if a writer gives into their poetic genius by publishing poetic prose, the reader will set down that book and turn on Netflix. Rule number 5, start as close to the end as possible. Now really, this is just a different take on the whole start in the middle or start in the middle of the action, but it bears the same philosophy. The only person who needs 150 pages of backstory is you, the author. Now my favorite anecdote that demonstrates this perfectly comes from Jay Kristoff, who is the author of the Nevernight trilogy. When Jay was revising the first book in the trilogy, Nevernight, he actually deleted 80,000 words from the start of the novel. 80,000 words. To put it in perspective, this novel is 80,000 words. So why did he delete an entire book out of his book? Because it was backstory and he didn't need it. Now you can weave that backstory into the main plot, or you can allow that backstory to inform the main narrative, but you do not need to hold your reader's hand through this painful setup material. We don't care where a character came from, we just care where they're going. Rule number 6, be a sadist. No matter how sweet and innocent your leading character, make awful things happen to them in order that the reader may see what they are made of. Now, I gotta be honest, this is probably one of the hardest rules, or at least it is for me. Because if you love your characters, or at least like them, then you're kind of rooting for them to succeed. You want them to achieve their goals and to live long, happy, and pain-free lives. Unfortunately, that's not very interesting to read. And victories without losses just isn't that compelling. We want to see the character overcome these obstacles to pull up their bootstraps. We want them to be clever and to survive emotional and physical setbacks. We want them to earn their victories. Rule number 7, write to please just one person. Who that one person is totally up to you. However, I really hope that you pick yourself. Whether you decide to go indie or traditional, publishing is hard and you cannot control your readership. What you can control is your story. Put it this way, it would suck if you spent 5 years writing a book that you weren't that into, but you thought would sell, and then you put it out there in the world and it totally tanks. What would suck even more is to spend 5 years on a book that you're not into and that gets published and that becomes a success, and then you're committed to that series or that style or that genre of writing. Of course, the best way to be happy as a writer is to write what you want to write. Anything else will feel like a waste of time, money, and passion. Rule number 8, give your readers as much information as possible as soon as possible. To hell with suspense. Readers should have such complete understanding of what is going on, where, and why, that they should be able to finish the story themselves, should cockroaches eat the last few pages. There is a careful balance between withholding information as a means of suspense and withholding so much information that your readers either become confused or bored. But what Vonnegut is really getting at here is that you need to use the dripping out of information as a form of narrative drive. You need more than a good secret to keep a reader reading. It is far more interesting to give them the information they need so that they can see what the core conflict is, and then to follow the character as they go about resolving it. So there you have it, guys. That's Kurt Vonnegut's 8 Rules of Writing. Now, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and remember to check out the other videos in this series. If you want even more writing advice, you can head to taraeast.com, where I have over 150 writing advice blogs on the website, covering a range of materials from craft advice, inspiration, motivation, business and marketing tips, as well as productivity and time management tips as well. While you're there, be sure to join my weekly email newsletter, because when you do, I'll send you a cheat sheet called the 7 Ways to Stay Motivated as a Writer, the perfect complement to this series. And if you're looking for a new read, then I highly recommend you check out my mystery novel, Every Time He Dies, because it's pretty great. Thank you so much for watching again, guys. I really appreciate that you show up every week and that you watch these videos. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing. I'll see you next week.